Thirst that haunts the sea, soundscape waves crash, faint gulls cry in the distance. The wooden hull groans, a rope snaps somewhere in the dark. Silence falls. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be thirsty at sea? Not the thirst of a hot summer's day on land, quenched with a tavern's isle. Not the thirst after a walk through the village fields. No, I speak of a thirst that gnaws at the soul. A thirst that claws at your throat until every swallow feels like sand. The thirst that turns lips into cracked leather. The thirst that makes hardened men who have stared down cannon fire, dream like children of rivers they will never see again. This was the shadow that haunted every voyage. Every sailor, every pirate, every desperate soul who set his fate upon the deep carried this curse. Lantern flickers, wind moans through the rigging, salt water everywhere. An endless ocean stretching to every horizon, a prison of blue. And not a single drop fit to drink. It was nature's cruelest joke. The ocean could swallow a man whole, but long before it did, it would strip away his sanity with thirst. And so, in the age when black flags ruled the horizon, when blood and iron were currency and freedom was carved with cutlasses, pirates faced a question deadlier than any cannonball. How do you keep men alive when the sea itself wants them dead of thirst? The answer was never simple. For water was life. But water mishandled was also death. Barrels. Great oak cask bound with iron hoops. These were the lifeblood of every ship, from the proud Spanish galleons to the ragged, swift sloops of pirates. Every voyage began with barrels carefully stowed. But here is the cruel truth: fresh water does not stay fresh. Imagine it, day after day, trapped in the dark belly of the cask. The sun beating down, wood sweating in the heat. Inside a slow decay. The water thickens, turns stale, turns green. Algae blooms, slime forms. Sometimes, things with legs crawling where no sailor dares to look too closely. And yet men drank it, because the alternative was worse. They said the first week, it tasted of earth and wood. By the second, it tasted of mold. By the third, of rot, like swallowing sickness itself. And yet they drank, grimacing, gagging, some vomiting before forcing it down. Because if they didn't, the sea would claim them faster. But pirates were not meant to surrender so easily. They were cunning, desperate, inventive. And in their desperation, strange rituals of survival were born. Take the rain, blessed, fleeting rain. When skies cracked open, men leapt like madmen, mouths open, faces raised like children catching snow. Sails were spread across decks, transformed into great bowls of canvas, catching every drop that fell. Buckets, helmets, boots, anything that could hold liquid, were pressed into holy service. Fill it, lads, fill it quick! Voices bellowed above the roar of the storm. Because the storm that saved you today could drown you tomorrow. And yet, for a brief, glorious hour, when barrels brimmed with were sweet rainwater, the ship became something close to heaven. But rain was fickle, and thirst was constant. So pirates turned to darker solutions: beer, wine. Liquids that could endure longer without rotting. They dulled the thirst, filled the belly, numbed the achy in the throat, but they dulled the mind as well. And a drunk sailor staggering on a swaying deck was as dangerous as any storm, so captains mixed it. A little water, a little rum, a little sugar if fortune allowed. And thus was born grog, not a drink of delight, but of necessity, a pirate's daily salvation and curse. Not because they loved it, but because it kept them alive. Yet even grog could not save them forever. Some voyages stretched too long, too cursed, too barren. Barrels dried, rain never came, and no rum, no trick of rationing could save them. It was then that men whispered of a strange alchemy, something almost too modern for an age of sails and cutlasses: desalination. Yes, some ships, rare and cunning, carried crude devices: iron pots over flame, salt water boiled until it rose as steam, steam trapped in cloth or copper pipes, dripping as precious drops of pure, drinkable liquid, slow, painful, never enough for the whole crew, but sometimes enough for a handful, enough to buy one more day. One more desperate sunrise, her thunder rumbles, the deck creaks louder still. Thirst was the cruelest enemy of all. Dehydration twisted men into creatures of madness. Tongues swelled like bruised meat, skin split and cracked, eyes sank deep into skulls, staring out with fevered desperation. Some hallucinated. They saw rivers dancing across the waves, forest blooming from salt, fountains rising like miracles from the ocean. Some leapt overboard, arms wide, chasing mirages that drowned them in seconds. Others turned on their mates. There are stories, old whispered, of men murdering for a cup, a mouthful. Even a rag damp with someone else's spit was enough to draw blood. It was not hunger that broke most voyages. It was thirst. And pirates, men of greed and ambition, learned quickly to control water was to control life, and to lose it was to invite death. Lantern sputters. Boots thump across deck. A barrel lid creaks open. Picture it: a crew of ragged men lined across the deck, each holding a tin mug, eyes hollow, hands shaking. The quartermaster cracks open the barrel. The smell wafts up, full, swampy, crawling with green rot. The men grimace, but no one steps back. The captain's voice cuts the silence. Drink or die of thirst. Mugs rise. Men drink, retching, coughing, swallowing sickness, because there is no choice. And in that single act, loyalty cracks, faith dies. The sea itself seems to laugh. Yet there are darker whispers still. Tales of captains who used thirst not only as a curse, but as a weapon. One captain claimed he could smell rain before it came. He'd steer his ship into black clouds on purpose, gambling lives on his nose. Sometimes he was right, sometimes not. Another quartermaster rationed not by rank, not by need, but by loyalty. Those who swore to him drank, Those who didn't withered in silence. He ruled with a cup more tightly than any captain ruled with a cutlass. These were not just methods of survival, they were methods of control. And from thirst, new tyrannies were born. Silence. A rope snaps, the deck groans. So the question was only how pirates got water. The true question was what it cost them to drink it. And here, sailor, is where our tale deepens. Because thirst is not only about survival, it is about power. And power, in the wrong hands, can be more dangerous than any storm. Wind rises, sails whip, distant thunder swells. But before we uncover the darkest cost of thirst, ask yourself, what would you do if the only thing between life and death was a cup of foul, rotting water? Would you drink? Would you beg? Would you kill? Or would you sink beneath the waves, never tasting the cursed brew? The sea has its answer, and soon, so will you. Thunder surces, the price of water, opening sound a ship creaks in the dead of night, waves slap gently against the hull, a whisper of wind hums in the rigging. You think thirst only kills? No. Thirst corrupts. It takes honest men and makes them liars. It takes brothers and makes them enemies. And at sea, it could turn a crew of freebooters into something darker than any storm could ever conjure. It always began the same way. A voyage too long, a storm that drove them off course, barrels running low. Rations cut, first in half, then again until men were left with gulps so small they barely wet the tongue. Then came suspicion. Was the quartermaster cheating? Had the captain hidden a private stash? Had someone in the darkness below deck tapped a barrel and stolen what little remained? One accusation could start a mutiny. One mutiny could turn the deck into a slaughterhouse. And many did. Soundscape the crack of a pistol. Shouts. Blades clash in the dark. There are records, half-burnt logs, trial notes from the colonies, of pirates who were hanged not for robbery, not for murder, but for stealing water. Stealing water was no crime of theft, it was a crime of survival. And to the men denied it, it was unforgivable. But let me tell you a story, a true one, the tale of Captain Briggs. His ship, the Widow's Mercy, was feared across the Atlantic, not for its speed, not for its cannons, but for the cruelty of its captain. Briggs had a rule. Water was rationed not by need, not by rank, but by favor. Those who pleased him drank deep, those who questioned him drank nothing. Men begged, men bribed. Men betrayed each other for a swallow from Briggs' private cup, and when dissent rose he would summon the guilty to the deck, force a mug of brine into their hands. Drink, he'd say. They knew what it meant, salt water, death in a cup. Some choked, spat, resisted, others swallowed in silence, knowing their end was only hours away. Salt water swelled their tongues, tore at their stomachs, and drove them into madness before death claimed them. Briggs ruled with thirst. And it worked. For a time the sea does not suffer tyrants forever. One night, with barrels nearly dry, the men snapped. They stormed his cabin, knives flashing in the lantern light. Briggs fought like a demon, but thirst had weakened even him. They dragged him screaming to the deck, lashed him to a barrel, and rolled both overboard. The ocean swallowed tyrant and cask alike, and the crew was free. Or so they thought. When dawn rose, they found the barrels empty, every last drop gone. Their mutiny had bought them freedom but not survival. Within days the Widow's Mercy was a floating grave. A ghost ship adrift, her sails slack, her crew reduced to skeletons gnawed by gulls. Briggs had won after all. For even dead he had left them nothing but thirst, to silence. Just the low groan of wood. Stories like this carried across the sea. Warnings whispered from ship to ship. But still men sailed, still they risked everything on the water. Because for all its cruelty the sea promised something greater. Fortune, freedom, immortality. And so, with every voyage, the old bargain was made again. Water for life, thirst for death. But not all stories ended in despair. Some captains, rare wise, understood that water was not only survival but loyalty. They guarded their barrels like treasure, but rationed them with fairness. They taught their men to harvest rain, to bowl brine, to pray to the heavens and work the sails so storms would bless them instead of break them. And when such captains spoke, their men followed, not for gold, not for fear, but because they knew their leader would not let them wither. Water was more than drink, it was trust. And trust, at sea, was worth more than any chest of Spanish silver. Storm rises, lightning flashes, so, sailor, what lesson does the sea leave us? That thirst can kill. Yes, thirst can corrupt, certainly. But more than that, it teaches us that every drop of water, every swallow of life, came at a price measured in loyalty, in betrayal, in tyranny and freedom. A price that sometimes ended with mutiny, and sometimes with mercy. The sea is endless, its stories uncountable. But of all the curses it holds, thirst remains the oldest and cruelest. Because you can fight a storm, you can fight a ship of war, you can fight even death, if you have the strength. But thirst whispers, thirst never leaves, and in the end thirst always wins. Thunder thrash, waves roar.